Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about the parsha. The parsha is not just the beginning. It's not just a new parsha. It's also a new book. We have the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, the 5 books of the Torah, and the book that we're going to begin now is the 4th book, which is the book of Bamidbar. Bamidbar also has another name. The book of Bamidbar is also called Chumash HaPekudim. The Chumash, the book of counting, because the first 2 parshas, and then later on towards the end of the book of Bamidbar, deal with counting the Bnei Yisrael, the census. So this is what we're going to discuss today: the counting of the Bnei Yisrael. Why count? What does the count achieve? And so on. So first of all, we'll start with the pasuk. The pasuk says that Hashem spoke to Moshe in text 1. Hashem spoke to Moshe in the desert of Sinai, in the tent of meeting, the Ohel Moed, on the first day of the 2nd month in the 2nd year after going out from Egypt. And Hashem said the following: take the sum of all the congregations of the children of Israel, by families, following their father's house, a head count of every male according to the number of their names. From 20 years old and upwards, all who are fit to go out to the army of Israel, you shall count them by their legions, you and Aaron. And then the pasuk says that they indeed were counted. They counted them from 20 years and upwards. And in text number 2, towards the end, we give the sum total. The sum of all those who were counted, 603,550. So obviously, if we want to know how many people there were, these were males over the age of 20. How many people did that amount to if we take into account women and children? So today we can take an estimate around 2 to 3 million people in total. But we're not going to focus on how many there were today. Today we're going to focus on what was the purpose of counting them. Now, this is not the first time that Moshe has been instructed to give a count. In text 3, we have a quote from the book of Shemos, in Exodus, that the Bnei Yisrael journeyed from Ramses to Sukkot, about 600,000 on foot. The men, that's besides the young children. So we already have an estimate. Then we had an additional counting of the Jewish people just after the golden calf, which is pointed out in text 4, that when they were instructed to give the half shekel, Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, when you take the sum of the children of Israel according to their numbers, let each one give to Hashem an atonement for his soul when they are counted. Then there will be no plague among them when they are counted. What should they do? Let each one give a half shekel. Right? So when each one gives a half shekel, then we're able to count the shekalim, and we know how many Jews there are. So this was right after the sin of the golden calf. So we know that there were 3 times when the Jewish people were counted. There was, as the Medrash actually points out, Medrash points out in text 5a, the Jewish people were counted 10 times. Once when they went down to Egypt, once when they left Egypt, once in the beginning of the book of Numbers, this week's parsha, once at the time of the spies episode, later on during this book, once during the days of Yoshua, when the land was divided amongst them, twice in the days of King Shaul, once in the days of King David, once in the days of Ezra, and another we had after the golden calf. So if we have 10, there's a bit of a disagreement. Some say that the 10th counting will be when Mashiach comes. So one thing is very clear, that the counting is one of the themes of this entire book of Bamidbar. And as we even find that this is the way that it's called in various parts of the Torah, Chumash HaPekudim. It's the Chumash, it's one of the 5 books of Moshe which focuses on numbers. So of course we want to understand, why count? Is it that Hashem doesn't know how many people there are? Hashem is omnipotent. Hashem doesn't need to take a census in order to be able to know how many Bnei Yisrael, how many Jewish people there are. So why do we count? So obviously the counting is to emphasize or to point out something. So in text 7, we have the explanation of the Mizrahi, Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi, who's one of the foremost commentators on Rashi. And he says, Hashem counted the Bnei Yisrael upon their exodus from Egypt to publicize that the Jewish people were blessed during their time in Egypt. They numbered only 70 when they arrived, and they left 600,000 strong. So, how many years were they there? 210 years. Take the number, 600,000. And 200 years earlier, there was 70. What is that, a growth? Even if you count only the men of 600,000, that's a growth of more than 8,000 times growth. So, let's take, for example, America. America at 1800 was approximately 5 million people, and now, 200 years later, it's about 300 plus, 308 million people. That's a growth of about 61 times. To have a growth from 70 to 600,000, that's a growth of more than 800,000 times in 200 years. That's supernatural. So by counting the Jewish people when they went into Egypt, they were counted as 70 people. By counting them 200 years later when they exit Egypt, 600,000 strong, we're talking about a fantastic growth. That's besides if taking into account the women and children as well. Okay, so we can understand why Hashem counts them when they leave Egypt. But why does He count them after? Why does He count them after the golden calf? So here there's another reason. Because during the golden calf, unfortunately, many Jews perished. Many Jews were killed. So now Hashem wants to count them in order, so to speak, to regroup, in order to see how many are left. And as the Medrash says as follows. Text 8. Hashem said to Moshe, count the Jewish people. Moshe replied, my master, Hashem, it is written, your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth. And now you tell me to count them? Hashem said, if you wish to determine their numbers, add up the numerical value of the first letter of each tribe's name, the total of which is 509,700,000. 509,700. The 3,000 that are missing from the previous count are those that were killed because of the golden calf. So it is right. Plus, but how many did we have? 600. We have to understand what this Medrash means, because we have Chamesh Meis. No, they translated it wrong. 597,000. Add 3,000 for those that were killed during the calf. You have 600,000. 3,000 who were killed. So Hashem therefore told Moshe, count them. That's a verse in the portion of Kitisa, that the children of Levi killed 3,000 of the Israelites that had worshipped the calf. Therefore Hashem told Moshe, count them to see how many are missing. And Rabbi Menachem said in the name of Rabbi Bibi an example about this. This is an analogy to a king who had many sheep. Wolves came and breached their numbers. The king said to his shepherd, count the sheep to see how many are missing. Likewise, Hashem told Moshe, count the Jewish people to see how many are missing. So, after this terrible sin of the golden calf, Hashem once again counts the Jewish people to see, to reassess, to get a new count as to how many people there are. Now, after Hashem forgave the Jewish people for that sin, Hashem gave a commandment to build a Mishkan. And then He commanded another count. Why do we have to have another count? So the answer is like this. Says the Kli Yakar. The Kli Yakar explains that there's a minimum threshold of Jewish people that are required in order for Hashem's presence to rest properly amongst the Jewish people. Let's take a look inside. This is a not well-known concept. Kli Yakar in text 9 says like this. The Jewish people were counted when Hashem rested His presence upon them For the rabbis have said, Hashem does not rest His presence upon the Jewish people when they number fewer than 22,000. So that His dominion on earth be similar to His dominion in heaven. As the sages have said, that when Hashem appeared to Israel, the people of Israel on Har Sinai, the mountain of Sinai, 22,000 chariots of angels descended with Him. So when the same number is present among the people of Israel down below, so we have also God's presence rests among them. For this reason, the Levi camp, which consisted of 22,000, was called the camp of divine presence. They exactly equal the same number of angels that God came to the mountain of Sinai with. This was a divinic number. Therefore, the Jewish people needed to be counted to determine if each tribe had the correct number to warrant God's presence to dwell among them. So each tribe had to have at least 22,000 as well. So in other words, although we like to think, we do know that each individual is important, we also are being told here that there's something, there's an added value, there's an added sanctity that is brought about when we have an addition of sheer numbers. Well, we know this from minyan, even though each person is important in his own right. 10 brings the Shekhinah in the form of a minyan. We know that there's opinions that 10,000 brings a certain deeper level of Shekhinah, 100,000, and so on. So here we're being told that the number 22,000 is a significant number in terms of revelation of Shekhinah. It represents the same number that God surrounds Himself in terms of angels. And in that context, Hashem was counting the tribes to make sure to confirm that in each of them there were, to point out, Hashem knows the numbers, point out that in each of them there was a requisite, a number that the full-fledged revelation of God's presence could be manifest there, just as it is in heaven in the presence of the 22,000 angels. Okay, now Ramban says, text number 10, that don't forget the Jewish people after the construction of the Mishkan were really supposed to head off to Israel. If they wouldn't have had the sin of the spies, which took them 40 years wandering the desert, at this stage they should have been preparing to go to Israel. How were they supposed to go to Israel? They were supposed to go in with war. Even though Hashem was going to pretty much fight the war for them, but they still needed to prepare an army. Prepare an army, you need to assemble the ranks. To assemble the ranks, you need to count the people. Who are they counting? We're counting army-age men, men of the age of 20. That's why they counted men of the age of 20, because they were counting for the army. This tribe of Levi, which wasn't going to fight, indeed was counted from a 1-month-old. They were to serve Hashem. It could be a little baby also. But to serve in the army, one has to be a certain age. So says Ramban in text 10, another possible explanation is that counting is common practice before waging war. The Jewish people were about to enter the Holy Land and wage war with the Amorite kings. For this reason, only men eligible to fight were counted. Okay, so we've given different reasons for the various counts. One is when we left Egypt, we want to show how the tremendous, almost you could call explosive growth, miraculous growth of the Jewish people was from 70 to 600,000 within a span of 200 years. When it came to the Egel, when it came to the golden calf, we wanted to show that even though the Jewish sinned, Hashem wants to count to see how many are left, to reassess, so to speak. And then when it came to after building the Mishkan, there was a need either to establish that there were enough quantity of people to warrant the full revelation of God's holy presence, or on the other hand, they were about to go into the land of Israel, were it not to have been for the mess up with the spies, and therefore there was a census taken to ensure that the army was staffed enough to see who was of fighting age, who was over the age of 20. Now though we come to a reason that Rashi tells us, which really will explain all the other counts. We won't need to give individual reasons for each count. There's one overarching reason which will explain it all. Text 11 says Rashi, quoting the pasuk which says Hashem spoke in the Sinai desert on the first of the month in our parsha. So the first Rashi says like this: because they were dear to him, he counted them often. When they left Egypt, he counted them. When many fell because of the sin of the golden calf, he counted them to know the number of the survivors. When he came to cause his divine presence to rest among them, he counted them. On the first of Nisan, the Mishkan was erected, and on the first of Iyar, he counted them. So really, why does he count them? It's all an excuse. Really, he counts them because he loves them. Says Mizrahi, Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi, text 12, although each count was for a specific purpose, we gave purposes. It wasn't counting them all the time, only at certain junctures. Namely, to see how much their population had increased, or to see how many remained after the plague, or to know their numbers in order to cause his divine presence to rest among them. Nevertheless, even though we have an individual reason for each one, the underlying reason for each count is only his great love for them. So we know there's people that have online accounts will go in to see their balance, especially if it's a positive balance, and they got some kind of a deposit. Oh, they'll go in and see. When people have cash, they like counting their cash once in a while. People have jewelry, they like opening their safe, seeing what they have. Something you like, you want to be around it, you want to count it. It's a sign of endearment, a sign of pleasure. We're not talking about a sickness of Uncle Scrooge who likes, who goes to sleep, who goes swimming in his cash. That's a sickness. We're talking general. Somebody has something he likes taking it out, collection, an art collection, a stamp collection, coin collection. People like seeing what they have. I think Jewish grandmothers officially nobody counts their grandchildren. But they'll tell you, you're not supposed to count. But really,
you're not supposed to count. This is what I was about to say.
You're not supposed to count. With people, you're not supposed to count. Shouldn't be, God forbid, a negative influence. But good Yiddish abobis, good Jewish grandmothers, you can be sure that they count and they look at the pictures and they think about and so on. And that's because when somebody's dear to you, you think about them. So counting them is just an expression of Hashem's love to us.
Rabbi,
However, yes.
One question I want to ask you: how come we're not allowed to count Yidden using the numbers? Why should we count them like Aleph, Beis, Gimel?
Because we don't want to count people. The reason we don't want to count people is because there's a certain negativity associated with the counting people. It can arouse a negative eye. That's why the Jews were instructed to give a half shekel. Count them using an item, using an object. We count if each person gives one object, we can therefore count the amount of people based on the objects, but we don't want to count people. The Torah says you should count it by giving a half shekel. There shall not be a negef, there shall not be a plague by counting them. So in other words, when we count, there's some kind of an attention that we call to the individual, which if there's a lot of people together, that could call a negativity because it's so many, and it's could be create some forms of jealousy or some forms of negative vibes. But that's a different discussion. So Hashem counts because the Jewish people are dear to Him, so therefore He counts them. However, if Hashem really knows the number, so you could say spiritually Hashem counts them again and again. Why does He need Moshe and Aaron to physically count them down here below? And each Jew should know he's being counted. So here we're going to talk about something deeper in something deeper about counting. There's something, you see, I just heard a story. No, it's not a story. Somebody I knew well in Australia. When I was growing up, he was a Holocaust survivor. He passed away this year, or perhaps last year. And I was asking somebody, he's buried in Australia, and somebody told me that they saw his gravestone, and the first words on the gravestone are his Auschwitz number. A number that was branded onto his arm in Auschwitz. And the reason they put it on his gravestone is because that's very much defined who he was, because this was something he talked about, he showed, and it was something that he carried with dignity, that he had literally almost lost his life for being a Jew, and ultimately he had survived, and his success, he had success in building a family, hundreds, probably, by the time he passed away he had maybe over 100 grandchildren, great-grandchildren, He had a fantastic business, one of the wealthiest people in Australia, one of the wealthiest businessmen in Australia. He had come from the valley of death, and God had blessed him to come the greatest. But this was something very much part of him, and he was a Holocaust survivor. So there's something, what was so demeaning about getting that name branded, getting that number branded into them? What were the Germans trying to do? The Germans wanted to be efficient, keep track of the numbers. What that meant was, or what the Jew felt, was a total dehumanization. They had no name, they had no backgrounds, as if they had no family. Number 120 is not related to number 121. If they happen to come at the same time to the camps, and one of the two brothers got a number after each other, yes, maybe they're related. But numbers are not related to each other. Numbers are cold. Numbers are dehumanizing. Numbers take away any persona, any personality. Even a name has a personality to it. My name is different than your name. Each one has its own poetry. Each one has its own numerical value. Each one has the intention that the person who gave the name. There's something there. Take away the name, turn a person into a number, it's dehumanizing. However, that's in the negative side. The positive side, when people are looked at as units, and just in terms of their number, what you're saying is that each individual is as valuable to the community as the other individual. There's no one who's greater than the other. So not that each one is worthless, which is what the Germans were saying, but that each one is invaluable, each one is irreplaceable.
Like a human.
9, like we know with a minion, 9 lowlifes, or I should say 9 Moshe Rabbeinus, 9 great saints. Comes the 10th lowlife. If he's a Jewish guy, he fulfills the criteria of a minion, becomes 10. And he has, in terms of the unit value, same value as the other saint. So there's something very special about a number. A number points out that each person has that intrinsic, essential, intrinsic, special value. So, when it comes to counting, and this is what we talk about. We talk about loving our fellow as ourselves. We have from the Tanya, here in text number 14. By viewing the body with scorn and contempt, says the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, and by finding joy in the soul alone, one can easily fulfill the commandment to love your fellow as yourself with regard to every Jew, great or small. Since the body is despised and loathsome, and as for the soul, who can know its true greatness and excellence in its source, which is God? Furthermore, all souls are equal and share one Father. It is on account of this common root in the one God that all of Israel are called siblings. In the full sense of the word, only their bodies are distinct from one another. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe and Tanya comes to a very, very frank conclusion. If really what unites us all is the fact that our souls, in the essence of our soul, we're all essentially valuable, and therefore, in a sense, we're all equal. So if you're trying to have true love between two people, you want to have true love between two Jews, the only way it can be is if they're living on a soul level, in a true way. So the Alter Rebbe concludes, therefore there can be no true love and fraternity between those who regard their bodies as primary and their souls secondary. Only a love based on an external factor. Because if you want to have true love can only be when each one views the others as being essentially, looks at them from their essence. That's a difficult thing to do. However, when Moshe Rabbeinu counts the Bnei Yisrael, what's he doing? What he's emphasizing is that each of the Jewish people has something that's essential, the core of the soul. When Moshe comes and counts each and every one of them, what he's doing is expressing and revealing their belovedness. The fact that Hashem could count hiddenly, that Hashem could count in a way that is prophetic, divine, the Jew wouldn't feel that. When Moshe Rabbeinu comes and he counts 1, 2, 3, counts the shekels, and each one's contribution is considered exactly the same as the others. What he's expressing, what he's exclaiming, what he's pronouncing, what he's letting that counted Jew understand is that his essence is as important as anybody else's essence. There's something about him that's just as great as any other, even the greatest of the great. And this expresses their love. In the words of the Rebbe, in the Likutei Sichos, text 15, the inner Jewish spark is too lofty to be revealed. So God commanded to count the Jewish people, because counting them would reveal that inner spark. As Rashi explains, Hashem counted them out of His great love for the Jewish people, to publicize their dearness to Him. In other words, to reveal their great quality. It wasn't that Hashem was trying to announce it, to publicize it. Hashem was trying to bring it out in a revealed state. The way you bring it out in a revealed state is by physically having them counted down here below this earth. This brought out the revelation that each one had a deeply essential part to them that is countable amongst the greatest of the great. So this is why Hashem counts the Jewish people. However, why does He have to count them 3 times? So really, now we're going to talk about something a little bit more subtle, a little bit more deep. The greatness and the essentialness of the soul has different levels and different manifestations. In other words, we know that there's something about the Jew that will cause him to commit to Hashem even at the face of all odds. Many Jews have been surprised at their own reaction to being forced to convert to another faith, where they thought they didn't care much about Yiddishkeit, but yet when they were asked to do something antithetical, in opposition to Yiddishkeit or to commitment to God, they found that they had an inner strength and they were not prepared to rebel against God. So this is the state where the Jews flee from Egypt. They flee from Egypt. The Jews are not yet at a space where they are fully committed to God. Let's see it inside, text 16a. It was reported to Pharaoh that the people had fled. Jewish people had run away. And Pharaoh and his servants had a change of heart towards the people. And they said, "What is it that we have done that we have released Israel from serving us?" The Jewish people said they're going for 3 days, if you remember, right? That's what Moshe Rabbeinu asked. Pharaoh said, "No problem, let it go for 3 days." But then it says the people ran away. Why did they have to run away? You know, Pharaoh was already brought down to his knees. Why were the people running? If they would have just gone casually. Pharaoh had no choice. He was with the 10 plagues that smattered him. Says the Alter Rebbe asked this question, 16b. Alter Rebbe says, at first look, it's not understood. Why did the Jewish people have to run away from Egypt? Had they demanded of Pharaoh that he set them free forever, would he not have been forced to do so? He had the plagues. He was going to lose his own life. So the Alter Rebbe says they were compelled to flee because the evil in their animal souls was still present in full force. And their aim and desire was that their divine soul leave the exile of the Sitra Achra, the impurity of Egypt, and cleave to God. Let's say an example. For example, somebody who knows that he's an addict to a particular substance, to a particular behavior. The most important thing he can do at the beginning stages is to stay away from it. Not to be in a place, if he's an alcoholic, not to be in a place where they serve alcohol. If he's involved in other things, to keep that substance, to keep that environment, keep himself away from the environment. Why? Because he's still in a state of fleeing. He still has to run away. He still hasn't transformed himself. He's still fighting actively against that which is his challenge. So they had to run away from Egypt, not because Egypt wouldn't have let him go, because they may not have wanted to exit Egypt if they wouldn't run away. Egypt represented to them a negativity. Egypt represented to them a hedonism. Egypt represented something to them which they needed to run away from because they didn't have the inner strength to actually be able to escape that on their own. They were not transformed. Came the next stage. Then after that, he continues, thus regarding the future redemption, and Hashem will eradicate the spirit of impurity from upon the earth. It is written, you will not go out in haste, nor go in flight, for Hashem will go before you. Then the Bnei Yisrael will be transformed. So that was the first time the Bnei Yisrael were counted. The Bnei Yisrael were not in the greatest spiritual state. The second time they were counted represented a different stage in their growth. It was a stage where they were already after they were forgiven for the golden calf. Yes, they had suffered the loss of 3,000 men. That suffered, they perished in the plague. They were killed because of the golden calf sin. But what happened as a result of the golden calf is Hashem forgave them. So they reached a deeper level that Moshe was commanded to count the Jewish people when they began to donate towards the Mishkan after the sin of the golden calf. This was in the month of Tishrei, after Yom Kippur, when Hashem forgave the Jewish people and commanded them to make the Mishkan. So now they had the process with which to make their lives holy, because Hashem now gave them an instruction to build a Mishkan, to build a place for Hashem's presence. But this was still a process, a work in progress. This was them aiming and reaching towards making their life spiritual. They hadn't yet achieved that. The third time that they're counted is already once the Mishkan was already built. And therefore, we have to understand like this. The expression of the soul when it's still running away from bad is fascinating, because, as I said, people are surprised at their own resilience. Alter Rebbe says it in Tanya, text 18, like this: though evil may have held sway over a person all his days, if you looked at him during his lifetime, maybe you'd think he's not a very good Jew, he hasn't done much mitzvahs. Nevertheless, when he comes to a test of faith in the one God, since this faith is rooted deep in his soul, which houses intense godly light, all evil is utterly nullified. He can thus stand strong and sacrifice his life so as not to act against his faith. We're now 50 years before, following the 6-Day War. We're celebrating 50 years from that victory. Those that were around during that time will attest to the fact, of course, I'm not 50 yet, so I wasn't even born, but those that were alive will attest to the fact that the outpouring of Jewish support, the feelings that Jews world over, it looked like the Jews were going to be overrun. The same thing happened again, unfortunately even worse, in the Yom Kippur War. It looked like the future of the Jewish people in the Jewish homeland was at stake. And Jews that didn't know they cared so much about God, about the Jewish people, lined up and wanted to simply go and fight for the... I've spoken to a group of people, and one of them was a pilot who was in the Air Force during the Vietnam War era, and he was stationed at the time in Thailand, and I think in '73 he went to the Israeli embassy to volunteer his services to go be a fighter pilot. He wasn't needed, he wasn't, maybe they already had.
Some Americans were accepted in that.
Some Americans were in the fight of independence, and so on and so forth. So there's no question that this is a Jew. I don't think that necessarily thought much about his Jewishness in other occasions, but when there's a time of need, or when the Jew is pushed to the wall, we know stories of the Holocaust. Totally assimilated Jews, they were given a chance to be baptized and save their lives. Many didn't take that option. They didn't even know themselves why. They didn't feel so Jewish, but when that was challenged, when they were pushed to the wall, when we were pushed to the wall physically or spiritually, there's what the Alter Rebbe calls the faith which is rooted deep in his soul, which houses intense godly light. Everything is nullified before that. So this is a very, very potent time when Hashem counts the Jewish people at that stage, when they're running away from Egypt, when they're basically having an act of faith, going into the desert without any provisions, because they believe in God. They still haven't transformed themselves. They have to actively run, because they may, if they think about it, they may go back, but they express self-sacrifice. So when Hashem counts them at that juncture, there's a very potent process going on. He's expressing the innermost depth of the soul, which had just come to its revelation in the act of Exodus. They had run away following God. But the thing is like this, the problem is that these acts of fiery commitment, what happens to them afterwards? Very often, they burn, they get into a burning commitment, into a fiery enthusiasm, into a loud crescendo of belief and commitment and so on. And then afterwards, the wind is down. It doesn't last. So what did Hashem do? At some stage, Hashem says you need to house this inspiration into something grounded. You need to incorporate it, you cultivate it, you need to make it part of who you are. And that was what the building of the Mishkan was. So in other words, bring Hashem into the camp in a permanent way so that you're aware of His presence also in your daily lives. And this is what we do with mitzvahs. Hashem gave us at Sinai, gave us mitzvahs, so that it's not just at those moments of intense inspiration where it's your God or your life. We choose God even over our lives, but it's in the morning, 5 minutes sleep, or putting on tefillin. It's when we go to the bank, 10% to charity, or just everything for myself. It's when we go to the store to buy food. Am I going to eat just like anybody else, or am I going to eat like God wants me to eat? When I make my marriage choices, am I going to be married the way God wants me to be married, or am I just going to follow my own instinct, and so on and so forth? So this is not the kind of self-sacrificial, intense expression of the soul, but these are expressions that need to be brought more into the confines of our own existence and in the world. So this needs, again, an expression of soul, but not the fiery, one time in a lifetime kind of experience, but the more daily experience. As in text 19, in the words of the Rebbe, when Hashem commanded the Jewish people to build a Mishkan, so as to dwell among them, inside each and every Jew, a second count took place. The original count and expression of the soul was not enough, because now the soul revelation was to be in a much deeper fashion, so as to engage a Jew's faculties in the service of God. You may think actually it sounds like it's less revelatory, less of a revelation. Where do you feel God more? In that